In today's latest news, I break down the story behind Graham Potter's sacking. I explain why the board finally took action and relieved Graham Potter of his managerial duties. I explain where we go from now, how the players react to this news, plus a lot more. Now I need to put my hands up, yeah? When I released the video yesterday, I was out with friends, I was hosting, and I was boozed up differently, so it was a real struggle getting a video out. But today, expect there to be tons of content around Graham Potter's sacking, where we go from now, the preview for the game against Liverpool tomorrow, plus managers we should look towards to help bring some progress to this board's process. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Hit that like button and share your thoughts and opinions too, without wasting any more time. So let's start with things and let's break down the story behind Graham Potter's sacking, because why has he been sacked exactly at this point in time? Why was he not sacked earlier? Why was he not sacked during international break? So many questions. Let's explore and examine all the reports that have dropped around the story. To start with things, we turn our attentions to that defeat against Aston Villa, because in the evening after that defeat, there were extensive talks held around Graham Potter's future. And by 8:32 AM yesterday morning, the press office sent out emails that Potter would not be attending media duties for our upcoming game against Liverpool. And by 2:45 PM yesterday afternoon, Graham Potter was sacked and relieved of his duties. Now there's multiple reasons as to why he was sacked in that moment yesterday. And we start with Lawrence Stewart and Paul Winstonley, because these guys work together in tandem and they both realize that Graham Potter isn't showing signs of progression. He isn't really steering us towards this fabled process that the club's trying to get towards. And they communicated with Todd Boehly and Boehly to get their blessing in relieving Graham Potter of his duties. When they both spoke to Graham Potter, it was a very short and concise phone call, and Graham Potter seemed to be working alongside them and kind of accepted the fact that he was going to be sacked. I want to add this very quickly, but I actually think it's quite good that the transfer team are working together when it comes to finding mutual decisions that everyone agrees upon. Because I was getting slightly worried that, okay, are there like dissenting voices where this guy's an opinion, this guy's an opinion, and we get to no conclusions at all? So this is a positive sign that these guys are working together. Especially as Paul Winstonley was working alongside Graham Potter for how many years already at Brighton. Now, another reason why it was decided that it was the right call to sack Graham Potter was due to the fan anger and backlash expressed towards him. Of course, it's been terrible form for large parts of the season under Graham Potter, and reports say that Boehly and co underestimated the importance of keeping the fans happy. And I think this is a very powerful lesson, because fans have a lot of say and power in this country, and a lot of these guys get quite frustrated because it makes a lot of sense to me. You're investing so much time into supporting your football club financially, weekends in your life. You want to feel like that investment of time is respected. So going in the future, it's good that this is finally understood. But after that defeat against Aston Villa, this was the final wake-up call that people at the top needed to see. Now, Graham Potter did have an opportunity to still talk to the board to try and persuade them for him to remain here, to have more time to build, but it was reported that the discussion didn't really instill too much confidence that there was an opportunity for him to turn anything around. I'd imagine that you've had multiple talks like this, you've heard multiple different tactical ideas, presentations, etc, and there's only so many different ones you can hear before you realize collectively, okay, I got no faith or confidence at all. It seemed like the sacking was pretty straightforward, because it seemed like Potter was in accordance with things and he agreed to collaborate to facilitate a smooth transition away now. And him and Billy Reid have left the football club, but Potter's existing staff and coaches are remaining. That's a little bit unusual, but of course, due to how sudden this sacking is, these coaches just can't be sacked like that and now they're out of a job. So I think this is the fair decision for all parties. Former Brighton player Bruno Salter is set to take over as our current interim manager, and I want to drop a video after this one this afternoon, so stay tuned for that. But the most important news is we won't have to pay Graham Potter 50 million to relieve him of his existing contracts, and it does make a lot of sense, because let's cast our minds back to the January window. We signed all these guys and we told them, listen, if we don't get Champions League football, naturally in your contracts you'll earn less money for next season, and they all agreed upon that. This just communicates that these guys think to the long term and they prepare for worst case scenarios. So there was no way that they would just quickly sign Graham Potter for this amount of money, whilst risking the fact that they might have to pay around 50 million just to sack him if things don't go well. It seems like a compensation fee has been met with Graham Potter. You'd imagine he's going to earn some money from that, but it won't be the full 50 million. Anyway, Boehly and Boehly released a statement on the club's official website, and it says, on behalf of everyone at the club, we want to say thank you to Graham sincerely for his contribution to Chelsea. We have the highest degree of respect for Graham as a coach and as a person. He was always conducting himself with professionalism, integrity, and we are disappointed by this outcome. Along with our incredible fans, we will be getting behind Bruno and the team as we focus on the rest of the season. We have 10 Prem games left and a Champions League quarter-final ahead. We will put every effort and commitment into every one of those games so we can end the season on a high. And as I said in yesterday's video, I do think that this sacking also does communicate that these guys haven't given up on this season. The squad is good enough that it shouldn't be impossible potentially for us to even go on a 5-game, 6-game winning streak. And if that was to happen in a bipolar season like this one, who knows where we could be come the end of the season. But right now, let's now discuss the players' reaction to Graham Potter's sacking. And this was pretty interesting because we learned that when we found out the announcement that Potter had been sacked, that was the same time the players themselves had found out that Graham Potter was sacked. So they saw the same stuff we saw on social media, and naturally there was a bit of panic, uncertainty. All these guys reportedly were phoning their agents and reps to find out what the hell's been happening. But the logical reason behind why the players were left in the dark was because with information like this, we didn't want any leaks. So I can understand that the club wants to control the narrative and communication at this point in time. It's a necessary evil, but I think it still has to be said that, there are human consequences to this scorched earth approach. I mean, it's a 33-man squad, and listen, I do kind of feel for the players too. Like most of the guys signed in the summer, they're all struggling for us throughout the season, and even their futures are a bit uncertain. We've signed top-class young players that are barely getting the minutes that were promised to them. We've signed incredible talents in January as well too, plus existing players at this club already. It's a very techie and messy situation. And you're realizing that already these guys will be playing under their third manager potentially, and for the other guys, their second manager in just a few months. We need to improve upon this. We really have to. Because imagine that if a new manager comes in, he has completely different ideas to ideas that players thought they'd be playing into when they first signed for us. That can create its own issues in the future. And until we get a streamlined squad and get like a properly complementary squad that is fully integrated into a particular way of playing the system, we aren't going to do anything. This is the thing we have to fix. Now, naturally, not every player was quite upset by the news, and it was reported that, for some sections of the squad, Graham Potter was starting to develop a bit of a nickname. There were references to Harry Potter, there were references to Quidditch, and it was reported that portions of the squad didn't necessarily take Graham Potter as seriously. Now, that's not to say that Graham Potter wasn't liked. You can still be liked for these things, Players enjoyed his technical training sessions. They appreciated his emotionally intelligent responses in training too. But being liked isn't necessarily enough, because this sport is about competition and results and winning. And, the only thing to really make players happy is if they feel like they're on the right track to actually win and progress in their careers. And even the players that did like Graham Potter, doubt was starting to slowly creep in about whether Graham Potter actually had it in him to turn things around. Potter was struggling to assert his authority throughout the squad, and when you struggle to do that at top 4 clubs and big footballing institutions, there was an example given in particular about players lacking faith in Graham Potter, and they gave the example of analysis meetings post-match after games, and there was a general set of confusion throughout the squad because when ideas and mistakes were being addressed and brought up, there was no proper conclusion, nothing was really being resolved. And maybe this explains why those details every time kept costing us and costing us and costing us. Those details is where managers show what they're really about, because they're the details you have to fix to get the team right. But before I move on, I want to quickly say, I think for this particular context of the season, I don't think I'm even upset behind players being naturally frustrated. Of course, the bait names like Aubameyang, Ziyech, Zakaria, lots of these guys, they're good enough to get minutes into play. And I keep going back to this point, but if you're going to just sign anyone and everyone in one season, there's going to be consequences for everyone. Like, how is anyone really going to be happy? Of course, these guys are naturally going to be very frustrated. And I think especially Aubameyang, I think with what this guy has been through over the past 12 months, I mean, you know, the guy was even beaten up in his yard and robbed in Barcelona. Then he signs for us the next day, and then Tuchel's sacked the day after that. It's just been a complete mess for him. And I actually do sympathize with his frustrations. So in this time, I'm not angry with the players at all. For me, this is a lesson that our board needs to learn about the consequences of, you know, this particular business strategy. Now, let's discuss where we go from here. Because as we know, Bruno Salter is taking over duties from Graham Potter, and he is going to be our interim manager. Now, of course, he was a former player at Brighton. He was well respected and revered there. Like, he's got like cult status with that club, and it's a big opportunity for him. It's going to be really interesting to see what he does. Will he maintain existing ideas we've been seeing, or is he going to bring in his own ideas? And if that's the case, why not? Because maybe next week or the week after, a new manager is coming. So he's only going to be here for like a short amount of time. But as I recorded yesterday's video, waved out my mind, I was of the belief at the time that if we're sacking Potter like that, we're doing that because we want to take off Mr. Nagelsmann off the market. Because clubs like Paris Saint-Germain, Tottenham, Real Madrid, they need a manager in the summer. We don't want to be in a position where we're competing alongside institutions like this over Nagelsmann, because that could backfire and fall in our face. So even though we haven't secured Nagelsmann right now, reports have said already that we have been in communication, and currently, based on all the reports I've been reading, it seems to be like a 50-50% chance that we can persuade Nagelsmann to sign for us and take over Graham Potter. Guys like Lawrence Stewart, Paul Winsley, they're going to be working overtime to assess the right candidates and find the right managers. Names like Enrique, surprise names like Silva from Fulham, managers like Glasner from Frankfurt, even De Zerbi. Names like this have been brought up, and it does seem like we're going to have to gas things so hard, just like we did in the January window, to persuade a top-class manager to sign for us. Because regardless of how you feel about Graham Potter, let's not focus on Potter. Let's focus on how it could be difficult for any manager right now to come in during such a difficult time. Obviously, they want to feel that they're going to be safeguarded, that they're going to have time. And you have to go off evidence, right? If 2 managers have been sacked in 7 months, you know, it's not communicating the board's vision properly, right? Regardless though, for me, I think this probably has to be Nagelsmann out of all the managers on the market. I would say De Zerbi, but I just don't think we have it in us, right, to go back to Brighton again to sign another manager. That would just be absolutely mad. And we know that Christopher Vivell and Lawrence Stewart both rate Nagelsmann very highly, and they've already worked with him, of course, under Red Bull already. So there's a lot of like complementary factors here where realistically, based on the structure that's currently being built, Nagelsmann makes more sense and fits in with things as the face of what this club is actually trying to be. Anyway, to end things, I'm going to give my conclusion, and I think, let's be fair, right? This is the most patience I've seen for a manager since Mourinho during his second spell. There was like a genuine belief that, listen, we want to give Graham Potter some time here, not even because of the finances and the money and factors like that, but because I think there was an understanding that, okay, we can definitely respect that it is harder to do things. But I guess it's also in difficult moments that you can really understand whether someone is able to rise to the challenge and still make things happen. And this is where we didn't really get too much hope and faith that Graham Potter could turn things around. And I think actually, in hindsight, I guess Graham Potter's future was relying on the fact of whether we progressed up the table or whether we fell off. And the moment we fell below into the bottom half of the table, I think that was the right time to let him go. And it was decided then in that moment, this guy's the right guy for us. I think it's quite ironic that, you know, we lose to Aston Villa. That is the game that determines Potter's future, because we were literally level on points. We had quite similar seasons, identical points. And since they sacked Gerrard to bring in Unai Emery, they've won 9 games out of 14, and they've shown a progression up the table. They've shown that he's found a way to get these guys playing together as a team. And Emery's shown the benefits behind making these changes to still save what you have left during the season. But I'm still going to bring up things like, you know, the season in general kind of undermining the full effectiveness of what we could have seen from Potter. Like, maybe in an alternate universe with a streamlined squads and more set ideas and less players to work with, maybe you're seeing some improvements. But I think whenever you see a manager do this, when he's like so bipolar in regards to how he wants his teams to play and lineup selections, it kind of communicates that he doesn't really know himself what's the best way to play. And if you can't get those base foundations set in stone, you're going to naturally undermine what you can do throughout a season, right? But I keep going back to the transfer strategy. Of course, in the long term, we'll look back like, yeah, it was probably the right move. It was worth the pain because these guys are great players and look how they progress and evolve. But it's about streamlining the process, right? Like, for example, if Fofana and Madueke aren't really going to play as much, would it have not made sense to sign these guys on pre-contract agreements so they come in the summer? The benefit they would have had is that they get more minutes and they come back with more confidence during pre-season. And then during pre-season, when the squad has been cut down, it's easier for these guys to integrate together and work towards a plan, right? Because I look at the squads and it's full of summer signings, January signings, existing players, players that are surplus requirements, and top class potential talents too. What is the balancing act to get all these guys playing together and make everyone happy? Because we talk the talk during all the transfer windows. You know, we told these guys we believe in you, here's our vision for you, here's the plan, here's the process, here's the vision of this football club, and they've all bought into that. But how is it actually going to start working together? And I kind of feel like have we maybe been a bit too hasty sometimes in some of the business we've done over the past few months. And now when I look at potential managers, you know, some of these guys prefer using the back three. That's going to affect guys like Khans and many other guys in midfield, right, if there's less positions. What if a manager favours having more up front? That's going to affect the defenders that have been signed. It's these little details, and for me, I need to see concrete answers and conclusions on what we are trying to be right now, because we can't be a jack of all trades, masters of none. And that's what it's communicating right now. Like, I don't want to be in a position where I'm seeing top class potential guys not achieving that potential because the foundations are not there for these guys to progress. And that is what I'm seeing at this point in time. So for me, whoever we bring in next, this has to be the last sacking I see in how long, yeah? I need to have full confidence and faith that the board knows exactly what they're doing right now. Because the reason why I even backed Graham Potter was because of the board. My faith has been in the board, this process and this project. For me, for all the patience I have for Potter, that was communicating to me I should have some patience for him. They must be seeing some things behind the scenes. Maybe things are going to turn around soon. And the fact that they've realized themselves now that, okay, we made a mistake for even keeping this guy here as long as we did. How does that give me the full confidence that the next appointment is going to be the right one that's finally going to start making things happen and work here? Because we have wasted 9 months. We've wasted a lot of time right now. And in this game, it's not about having all the best individual talents. It's about building the best team that's cohesive, united, and complements each other. And that's what this club has to do right now with their next managerial appointment. So my friends, with that note, expect there to be more content coming out today. Share your thoughts and opinions below. I'm Nini FC, this is BlueLionsTV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos. Cool.